grim day as the Iranians have killed three American troops. Sergeant William Jerome Rivers of Carrollton, Georgia, Specialist Kennedy Landon Sanders of Waycross, Georgia, and Specialist Brianna Alexandria Moffett of Savannah, Georgia. How should the United States respond, Senator?
It is grim indeed, Hugh. My condolences go out to the families and the loved ones of those three brave soldiers who were killed and the many dozens who were injured, Hugh. And I think there's several of those still in critical condition today. May God heal them all and get them back to their battle buddies and their families promptly. Hugh, the only way to respond specifically to this attack is massive and devastating military retaliation against Iran's terrorist forces throughout the region and in Iran itself. Only then will Iran realize that killing an American is an absolute red line that they can never cross again. Remember, Donald Trump in 2020 killed their terrorist mastermind Qasem Soleimani for targeting Americans just a few weeks earlier. In 1988, Ronald Reagan sank half of Iran's navy for mining the Persian Gulf, which didn't result in dead Americans, simply a damaged naval vessel and injured sailors. Unfortunately, this is the result of 8 years of failed policy from Barack Obama and his understudy, Joe Biden. 11 years, 8 years under Barack Obama and 3 years under Joe Biden. They have viewed Iran as a normal nation that has legitimate grievances against America, and if we would simply conciliate with them and appease them and grant them one-sided concessions, and Iran would pull in its horns, begin behaving like a normal nation, and everything would be wonderful again in the Middle East. That's not the case. Iran has been an unappeasable enemy of the United States for 45 years. One of the first actions of the Ayatollahs was to take Americans hostage in our own embassy and hold them hostage for more than a year. We have to totally reverse the failed Obama-Biden policy of 11 years and view Iran as what it is, an evil enemy that cannot be placated, that can only, in the long run, be defeated. That should be the policy of the United States.
Senator Cotton, Elliott Cohen wrote this morning, and it's quoted in news items. I want to read it to you. A different Iran policy would begin by making it clear that the United States was breaking with the failed approach of the past, that it understood Iran's implacable hostility and would henceforth act on the premise that the Iranian regime can never be conciliated. The United States would be characterized by vigorous covert as well as overt support for the strong currents in Iran that oppose the regime and periodically erupt in protest against it. It would respond to attacks by Iranian proxies on the United States and its allies with massive, disproportionate, and above all, lethal attacks. Above all, it would be and appear just as implacable towards Iran as Iran's leaders are towards the United States. In the absence of such a policy, Iran will grow stronger and more malevolent, not less. Iran will expand and escalate war in the Middle East and beyond. Changing American policy is not a good choice, but it is the best choice before the administration. Do you agree?
Well, Hugh, I think it is a good choice to change American policy for the reasons I outlined. For 45 years, Iran has been implacably hostile to America, and 11 years of failed appeasement and conciliation by Barack Obama and Joe Biden has only emboldened Iran and invited more aggression. I know that many people like to cite now, I think, over 160 strikes against American positions by Iran's proxy since the October 7th atrocity in Israel. Don't forget that there were almost 100 strikes against our positions before the October 7th atrocity, Hugh, since Joe Biden took office. And how many times had we responded? Something like 4 or 5. That kind of weakness simply invites more aggression. Yet you still see the president and his mouthpieces at the White House podium or on background newspapers saying, like, well, we want to be measured. We have to be proportionate. We are afraid that we might see escalation. What we saw over the weekend, Hugh, was escalation, Iran killing Americans. And there has to be massive consequences for that. And we should never be proportionate when an enemy attacks America.
I agree with that.
We should be overwhelmingly disproportionate.
I've talked about the oil refineries, which has been much discussed over many years because that would cripple their economy. Ambassador Haley said minutes ago on this program, first step is put the sanctions back in place. Other people like David Drucker suggest hit the drone factories. They're all inside of Iran, though. They go after Iran. I'm not in favor of hitting more IRGC camps because that's, as you said, they'll fight to the last Arab.
Yeah, so Hugh, there's no shortage of targets that we could take out that would send a message to the Ayatollahs. We certainly should target all IRGC camps and boats or ships and bases. But there's also other targets that would put immense pressure on Iran. For instance, you mentioned, as has often been mentioned, their refineries, because that is a massive bottleneck in the Iranian economy. One also that is controlled in no small part by the people that run the IRGC, who are also getting rich off of killing Americans. But there can be no doubt that America will not tolerate Iran or its proxies killing Americans or even targeting Americans anymore. There's a simple test here, Hugh, for what happens. Do the attacks stop? If they don't stop, then Joe Biden has once again failed. He has proven himself of being unworthy of being commander-in-chief for those young men and women that are in the Middle East, frankly, like sitting ducks, because he will not take the actions necessary, because he is cowardly, he is fearful, he broadcasts his fear all the time, and right now he's starting to introduce his own reelection calculations into the lives of Americans in the Middle East, which is outrageous.